got a copyright claim from City Hall. I got a copyright claim from City Hall. For live
The music. You just, I mean, they were playing a lot of music during the thing, so just mute it, or, you know, it's,
leave it.
Yeah, it's just not, you're not going to be able to monetize on it, that's it. It's not a strike, it's a claim.
You can appeal it as a fair use.
Oh, true, you could do that, because I always play music at rallies.
Right.
So, all right, we're live. We're live? Are we live? Yeah, we're live.
So it's going to be under the same Freedom Rally?
Yeah.
So it's going to overwrite the existing video?
We're live right now.
So wait, is it going to overwrite the existing video?
No. It's gonna go under. It's gonna start a new stream, but since I couldn't stop by home to switch the RTMP out, it's just gonna be. It's gonna restart with the same name. Woo! Hey, Cloud.
Cloud, stop walking like a fool. No, I'm not live yet. No, it's not live.
It's not live yet?
So maybe it'll do what it did yesterday. It won't go to my channel. It'll go to yours. Remember? Because you didn't start the new stream? It's fine. I'll make sure we're live on yours.
It might only go on mine then. Because
Yeah. That's what happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're live right now.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, no. It says...
I'm live.
But it's not streaming yet. It's just waiting.
Oh, that's a different one because I wasn't able to switch out the RTMP because I already pre-scheduled that one. So I just went now, like off the bat, off to my YouTube, and that's probably it.
So this says, Tara, how are you doing today?
I just went now.
Douglas Carell.
Hey, Douglas.
Carell.
All right, guys, with Adam Francisco, we are walking over to 42nd and 2nd, which is the Israeli consulate.
Yep, and I am definitely a bit hungover, guys. So forgive my appearance, my disgusting, filthy skin.
All right, too much detail, Adam. TMI.
I'm just hungover. That's what it is. Here we go. Israeli flags. All right, guys. We're gonna have a good time today. Pro-Israel on one side, right?
Yeah, usually the NYPD will keep people on opposite sides.
Wow, stop it.
Alright, getting on the scene. NYPD. Apparently there's more NYPD present than protesters on the other end. That's the Palestinian side.
And that's the Israel side.
And that's the Israel side.
Wow.
But so this one was scheduled to start at 4, so on time now. So the crowds will probably grow larger over the next little while. But currently it looks like there's even more police presence than protesters.
What's the name of this rally called?
Well, the flyer from the pro-Palestine side is Globalize the Intifada. I'm not sure what it's being called from the Israel side because I didn't know whether or not this was going to be a pro-Israel rally or you have Israeli and Palestinian both present. Because from my experience, I've usually seen at pro-Israel rallies, counter-protesters show up from the Palestinian community, and then I recognize some people over there too that were at the early rally. But then when I was talking to Ariel at the Medical Freedom rally, he said that he was heading to a pro-Israel rally. Then that's why I put two and two together. I'm like, it's the same same rally. So, can you explain your sign for us?
Does it need explaining? I think, it's racism. It's the Jews think, the Zionists think they're better than anybody else, and that their safety matters more than anybody else. Nonsense.
Thank you for being out here today.
What did you think of the guy standing on the...
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Right across the street, that guy. He says he's a Jew, but he's what does she have? Zionism is a white supremacy ideology. Cool. Interesting. Fire rocket at us. Israel is the righteous self-defense. So she's Israeli. She's a Jew, but she's sympathizer with the pro-Palestinians. It looks like, right? This is nice, guys. This is nice, guys. This is so fancy. Wow. Welcome to the Tara and Adam Show, episode 1075. But anyway, yeah, that's interesting. She's a Jewish Palestinian sympathizer, right? Sounds like. Cool.
It seems like Orthodox Jews counter-protesting the pro-Israel side.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, but it's good to come out to these rallies, and then I don't know very much about the situation, so let's just go with open ears and try and get people's stories.
Yeah, we could just ask people, why are you here?
Yeah.
You want to start? You want to start on the Palestinian side?
Yeah.
All right. Should I use the mic?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, the mic's connected.
And are you recording right now also?
Yeah, I'm recording also.
Wow. Oh, there it is. There's the Globalize Intifada sign. Hello. How are you guys doing? Good. We have YouTube channels, and we just want to we're covering both sides today. And I just want to, know why are you here, and what are you trying to express?
I'm here because the Palestinian struggle is related to struggles of all oppressed people around the world, and I'm here in solidarity with the Palestinian freedom. By any means necessary doesn't mean what it takes, because it's been 73 years and it's been too long that they have been struggling, and my country itself have been under colonial oppression for 180 years, which is subcontinental India at that time. So I'm here to show my solidarity to the Palestinian people and all oppressed people of the world.
Awesome. And now I understand that Israel and Palestine, one possible solution is a two-state solution. Do you think that that's a good?
If you're interested to know more, you can go to the sites and you can give this card in case you want to post it, and you get all the information you need with stats and facts and numbers and all of that for all opinions on all the matters within Palestine and Israel, or whatever the hell that was called. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Who are you guys with? What press?
We have our own. We're independent YouTubers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So she's Polish American Brotherhood, and mine is Adam Francisco, just my name.
Okay.
Yeah. So we just come out and we go to these kind of events and we just interview people on all sides just to hear their perspective. Yeah. So, interestingly enough, guys, he for some reason he shut that interview down. Not sure why. We were letting her speak her mind freely, but he shut it down on us, and that's fine. But that was a nice soundbite, and we appreciate her sharing her opinions with us. You want to ask some more people? Well, let's ask this girl. She's beautiful. Hi, you want to be on our YouTube channel?
Sure.
Awesome. First of all, I'm known for interviewing pretty girls. Look at my shirt. Look what it says. No, look, it says Hola chicas guapas. So I just wanted to know, are you guys, come here dogs. Are you guys here for the event?
No, we're just walking. walking by and we just found the event, so we're gonna support
Oh, so which side do you think you're going to support right now?
Palestine
Okay. And why? I'm just curious. Why do you take that side?
because
Why would
yeah,
I support
yeah,
a side that kills innocent children for no reason?
Yeah,
or
exactly.
occupies a land that does not belong to it? Or colonizes? Why would I support a colonizer?
Do you think that the two-state solution can ever happen? Is it realistic?
No, I
No.
don't think it is.
It's not.
No. One side is backed by a power like the United States, and the other isn't. So, is that ever going to work?
I hear that.
Why don't we ask the audience?
Well, thank you, ladies, so much. I appreciate it. And as I say in Spanish, tú eres chicas guapas, which means you are pretty ladies.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. My YouTube is Adam Francisco, and Polish American Brotherhood.
Yeah, do you guys have cards, Mike?
No, we're digital. We're fully digital, man. Yeah, we don't have any cards. So yeah, that was it. That was some great sound bites, guys. We're out here just interviewing people, getting their perspective, and I'm just gonna be honest with you guys. Come, let's go this way. I don't want to say it too loud over there. So as a Mexican Jew, I'm going to support and defend the only Jewish state in the world. So I'm gonna.
So the reason why the guy shut down the interview earlier is because you were asking about the two-state solution,
Oh.
which on the Palestinian side they would not be for.
Got it. Okay, interesting. But anyway, I am pro-Israel, but I also do sympathize for the Palestinian people. And that's why I'm here, not dressed up in any, Israel flag stuff. I'm not here today as an activist. We're here just to kind of hear both sides. And I think this is cool. So thanks for inviting me, Tara.
It looks so awkward. You're in your zone when you're walking on in a Trump flag, but
I'm more in my zone in a Trump flag or a Trump hat or,
yeah.
triggering libs and screaming weirdos at them. But this is interesting, We'll do some interviews, mix it up.
loud, so I want to hear how loud we can really get. How loud you can get for Palestine! We are gathering here today in front of this shameful Zionist consulate with that shameful flag to protest not only against the Zionist state, but also against those who normalize Zionist settler colonial violence, who normalize relations with so-called Israel. Just today, 4 Palestinian youth were martyred in Palestine defending their village, defending Beta. If you haven't heard about Beta, it's a Palestinian village that has more Israeli illegal settlements being built around it. There are Palestinians that continue to have their land stolen by Israel to make way for their Zionist settler colonial project that has pillaged and that has stolen Palestinian land for over 70 years and that continues to steal Palestinian land. What's happening in Sheikh Jarrah, what made the headlines everywhere, is happening all over Palestine. Every single so-called Israeli city was once Sheikh Jarrah. Every single so-called Israeli city was once a Palestinian city, whose people had to be kicked out, whose homes had to be stolen or demolished to make way for the Zionist entity. We have the solidarity of the people with us. You hear people honking, you see flags from different countries. People here from different struggles, different countries supporting the people of Palestine. Because although there are Zionist people who want to normalize Zionism and governments that normalize Zionist relations with Israel, we know that this is not the case for the people. This is not the case with the masses. This is the case with the corrupt leaders who speak falsely in our name. That's why you see the Moroccan flag here. That's why you see the Afghanistan flag here. But those flags that they have, flags that mark death and destruction, these are not flags that we want on our side. These flags, this entity, Israel, Zionism, is responsible for the deaths of countless Palestinians who committed no crime other than exist on their land. And Zionists wanted to kick them off of it. Today alone, Saleh Ammar, 19 years old from Jenin. Raed Abu Saif, 21 years old from Jenin. Amjad Husseiniya, 22 years old from Jenin. And Noor Jarrah, 19 years old, all from Jenin, also from Jenin. They were all shot and killed on August 16th while defending Jenin against an invasion by occupation forces. This just happened today. So many times when we call a protest for Palestine, we don't know when the next martyr is going to be, when more Palestinians will be killed. But every single time we call for one, in the days leading up to it, more and more names are added to the list. And many times on the day of, like today. So we also want to hold space to honor the martyrs of Palestine. These 4 Palestinian youth were shot and killed by occupation forces because they defended Jenin against an invasion. And I want to hear you say their names. Saleh Ammar, Raed Abu Saif, Amjad Husseiniya, Noor Jarrah. While we remember their names and remember the martyrs who gave up their lives fighting for our struggle, fighting for our people to live in peace, free from colonial domination and invasion. There are Arab governments, there are puppet governments that do not speak in the name of the people that are normalizing relations with this very entity. Turkey in 1949, Egypt in 1979, Jordan in 1994, And the list goes on and on. In 2020 alone, Sudan, Oman, and Morocco also normalized relations with Israel. We see their desperation increasing as our resistance grows, as solidarity, global solidarity with our struggle grows, as we globalize the Intifada. We see them trying to save Zionism, trying to save their idea that Israel will exist all over our land, which is what they say. They want to take all of Judea and Samaria. They want to take every inch of our land, and they never lied about that. They never made qualms about that. We knew that from the beginning. After we signed these so-called peace agreements, illegal Israeli settlements tripled and quadrupled. They continue to steal our land. How can you have so-called peace negotiations? How can you figure out how land can be divided when Palestinians were the indigenous population that were kicked out in the first place to even make way for the Israelis that are there now? How do we have peace negotiations as they continue to steal our land, as they continue to kill our people, as they continue to maim them and cripple them? How can you have peace negotiations against one of the largest, most powerful, most brutal armies in the world, when we're just an indigenous population fighting against colonization? This is why we reject the idea of peace deals. This is why we reject the idea of two-state. This is why we reject Zionism in its whole, as an entirety, because we know all Palestinian land is Palestine, from the river to the sea. Not just the areas that we live in now, but the areas that our grandparents were kicked out of. As a Palestinian, I can't even visit my country like so many other Palestinians, because Israel controls our borders, because Israel steals our water and steals our land, because Israel needs to conduct genocide. Israel needs to colonize in order to exist. Without colonization, without the genocide of the Palestinian people, Israel could not exist. We know this. So we will never normalize Israel. We will never accept those who normalize relations with them. They will be in the dustbin of history, and we know that they'll be embarrassed. We know that they will be shamed for their actions, their terrible actions in history, because we know that we will free Palestine within our lifetime. And we don't need a trend to tell us that. We don't need to be trending on Twitter. We don't need to be in the headlines to know that. We see what's going on in Palestine, because we never forget Palestine, because we know that we will never at all achieve true liberation and true freedom until all of us are free. And that means until Palestine is free too. So no matter how small we are, we're still stronger than whoever's coming against us, because they're on the wrong side of history. They are in the trash of history. And I want you to remember, while you're standing here, the 4 Palestinian youth that were killed today defending Palestine. We also here are standing today defending Palestine. But we don't have to face it. We don't have to do it at the end of a Zionist holding the gun of a barrel to our face. The barrel of a gun to our face. So while we're out here, I want us to be louder than ever and remember those Palestinian youth fighting for, resisting, and defending Palestine. This here too is resistance. If people won't put us in the news, if they don't want to put the stories of the Palestinians that are getting shot, killed, murdered left and right, just for defending their right to live on their own land, we will make it known. Free! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! From the river to the sea! Palestine
do we want it? What do we want? What do we want it? If we don't get it, if we don't get it, if we don't get it, if Muslim doesn't get it, no justice, no justice, no justice. If we don't get no justice, if we don't get no justice,
Informed told me about you. Elad told me about you a little bit.
Huh?
Elad told me about you a little bit.
Yeah. I remember. I saw your interview with him.
Yeah, I was one of the only people you ever interviewed because I'm open, person. But did you interview anybody or not yet?
We started talking to a couple of people and everything, but not really. We got here just before they were starting chanting and speeches and everything. So.
If you want to interview me, you can interview me or interview me.
Yeah, absolutely. Start.
All right, whenever you're ready. So the reason why we're here today is because all these Arab countries like Morocco, Sudan, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, most of these Arab countries are doing normalization deals with the Israeli government without putting into consideration their people and the Palestinian cause, which is important to the Palestinian people and the whole Arab world and the Islamic world as a whole. And the reason why we're here right now is because right now, as we speak, the Israeli government are destroying houses. They're stealing land. So I want people to understand, when Israel says we want peace, they say they want peace of Palestine, peace of Jordan, peace of Egypt. The Israelis cannot be trusted. We, the Palestinians, signed an agreement with them called the Oslo Accords, which stated that by 1999 there was supposed to be a Palestinian state in the 1967 borders. That did not happen because...
That's part of like the two-state solution that they were trying to have.
Yes, and we're still fighting for a two-state solution. Look, I know some Israelis, they're peaceful people, and they want peace. I want peace too. But how are you going to get peace when the Prime Minister of Israel, literally, verbatim, and I bet you $500 from his mouth, he said, I killed Arabs, it's okay, man. We kill Arabs all the time in Israel, it's normal. Can you imagine if an Arab, or here in New York, someone comes along and says, hey man, I kill Jews all the time, it's normal. That person will be in prison, that person will not have a job, that person will be in the garbage dump of society. So why do I allow it for Palestine? That's number one. Number two, the media only covers Palestine when Hamas, which is democratically elected by the people of Palestine, fire rockets at Israel. The question, why does Hamas fire rockets at Israel? Well, it's very simple. Gaza has become the literal Warsaw Ghetto. You're from Polish descent, right? So the Warsaw Ghetto, if you look at the story, the Nazis surround the ghetto and they're not letting nothing in or out. Now, the Palestinian people, it's the same thing. There's a place called Gaza. Gaza is literally the most populated area on earth. 2 million people live there. Nothing can come in or out without Israel or Egyptian permission. And the Egyptian government is as guilty as the Israeli government. But both are in cahoots because the reason why these Arab governments make peace with Israel is to secure their seat. They're like the Democratic Party. It's basically if I scratch your back and you scratch mine. Very simple. Now, on top of all this, Israel has a very harsh history against the Arab and Muslim population. Since the beginning. If you look at the war of 1948, what happened? Israel destroyed 531 villages. To this day, if you go to Palestine, I challenge anybody. Go to the northern part of Palestine, Tiberias, the Galilee, the Negev Desert, even West Jerusalem. There are remains of those Palestinian villages. And the Israeli government built settlements on top of those villages and cities. In this war, 10,000 Palestinians were killed alone in 1948. And 500 to 750,000 were evicted from their land by force, no choice. So when people say, oh, the Palestinians left by themselves, by choice, like some La La Land, that did not happen. That did not happen. And if you believe that, I'm sorry, you're an idiot, because people don't leave their land or their country to go to refugee camps and get handouts from the UN. That's the most humiliating thing to do. The United Nations is basically the international version of unemployment. They give you the bare minimum to live. Do you think Palestinians chose to leave so they could go to the United Nations and beg for money? We're not like that. We're not like that. Okay, that's number one. Also, from 1948 to 1966, Israel had concentration camps. What? Israel and concentration camps? Yes, they had concentration camps. They literally put Palestinians to work. The Palestinians literally built what is today Israel. They built the Israeli economy. They forced us to work. They killed us. And then they had zones where if the Arabs were the majority, they put Arabs into ghettos. If you go to Yafa today, which is today Tel Aviv, they throw all the Arabs into the old city and they stole their houses. This is the tip of the iceberg here. And also between 1948 and 1967, the Israelis were sitting down because let's be frank here. I'm not only going against the Israeli government, I'm going against the Arab countries too. There were deals under the table by the Jordanian government, by the Iraqi government at those times, and until today there is deals under the table that say, okay, Jordan, you can have the West Bank and East Jerusalem, just don't attack us. And the king, because he's a traitor, let me give you the equivalent. Imagine if there was a war between America and China, or America and Russia, and then Russia comes to America, bribe, let's say Joe Biden, and they say, Joe Biden, okay, give us Alaska and we'll leave you alone. And Joe Biden's like, okay, and then they put on this charade. There was a general named by the General Glub. He called the war of 1948 the phony war, because it was a war of just, whatchamacallit, like a television, just so that people could see all that we're fighting. That's number one. Number two, right after the war, the Israelis came, they sat down together, they planned their next moves. They said, okay, we want to take the rest of Palestine. It's not enough that we took more than we were supposed to in the partition plan of 1947, and we kicked out 750,000 Palestinians. No, we want the whole country. So, in the 50s and 60s, Israel started doing a nuclear program. They call this the Samson option. If you don't believe me, you can Google it. Even Haaretz wrote about it, an Israeli publication. Samson option. Okay, so they start working on this nuclear program. The French and the British look the other way. And then by the only president, there were only two presidents in this country that stood against Israel. President Eisenhower, who prevented Israel, France and England from attacking Egypt, because that would have been World War III, because the Soviet Union was behind Egypt, and you had the Cold War. Then you had John F. Kennedy. Now, with John F. Kennedy, it's very interesting, folks. John F. Kennedy was the only president on the record who didn't want Israel to get nuclear weapons. He sent inspectors to Dimona to check if Israel was making nukes, and no one, basically, Israel made a fake plant, and they got away with it, but John F. Kennedy was persistent. Also, Israel created something which is today called AIPAC, but back then it was called the Zionist American Council. And John F. Kennedy told them, you have to register as a foreign agent because you are from Israel. This is America. Why the fuck are you lobbying in our government? And then people are going to be like, oh my God, this guy is anti-Semitic. He's saying that the American government is controlled by Israel. I am against any. Now repeat that. I'm going to repeat. Any control. I don't want the Saudi government in our politics. I don't want the Egyptian government in our politics. I don't want Iran or Turkey or China or any fucking country lobbying in our country to use our army, to use our money for their bullshit politics. So don't come here and tell me, oh, anti-Semitic. I'm against every country that is milking us and mooching from us. So when John F. Kennedy didn't want to play ball, he got assassinated. Now, right when he got assassinated, Israel, right after that, had their first nuclear weapon. Their first nuclear weapon. Okay. Then you have the 6-Day War. Now people ask you, the narrative is, oh my God, the Arab countries were going to attack and destroy Israel. My question, if that was the case, wouldn't the United States come in and help? Since May of 1967, the president of Egypt sent troops to the Egyptian-Palestinian border to defend the border. It's like us. It's like ICE. It's like ICE and the Border Patrol. When you had the Border Patrol between Texas and Mexico, are we going to attack Mexico? No, because we're defending the border. Same thing with the Egyptians and when it comes to Egypt and Israel. Okay. You had the 6-Day War. Israel literally, just like Germany during World War II, waltzed into the Gaza Strip. They literally destroyed the refugee camps. They went into Sinai, took Sinai in the blink of an eye, using their air force, and they killed a lot of civilians. They went and they took Palestinians and they put them in concentration camps, again, in the Sinai Peninsula. Then in the West Bank, they destroyed the refugee camps and they kicked the Palestinians that were there out into Jordan, and they also took the Golan Heights. And in this war, basically, Israel basically finished what they started. They always wanted to take all of Palestine, and they did it in the 6-day war. Then after that, Israel started rapidly building settlements because they wanted to consume as much land as they can. So they will not be an Arab state. The Israeli government will never, ever, ever let Arab state exist. Will not let Palestine exist. Why? Because they have an agenda. And that agenda is clear, in my opinion. You could disagree. From the Nile to the Euphrates, what does this mean? This means they want to control economically and militarily and politically the Levant, which is Syria and Iraq and Lebanon and Egypt. Egypt and a part of Saudi Arabia today. So after the response of the Palestinian and the Arab world was the war of 1973. Prior to this war of 1973, the president of Egypt went to Israel. He said, let's make a peace agreement. We are ready for peace in exchange to give us the Sinai. Israel refused. Now this is where things get interesting. Egypt and Syria attacked Israel to reclaim the land they lost in 1967. When Egypt and Syria had the upper hand, guess what Israel did? They were in the process of implementing the Samson option. Israel literally had nuclear weapons pointed at Egypt and at Syria. Why did they do this? So the American satellites can catch it, and then America calls the Israeli government and says, stop, we'll give you the weapons needed, do not start World War III, because again, Cold War, Soviet Union versus America. Once the American support comes through, the war changes, and it ends in a stalemate, and then you have, as a result, what I call the surrender slave agreement, Camp David Accords. What does this agreement state? This agreement states the following. Egypt will get back the Sinai, but they cannot send their army in there, they cannot develop the Sinai without Israel's permission. That is equivalent, let's say America and Russia are fighting, and Russia's occupying Alaska. And then America takes back Alaska, but Russia says, okay, you cannot build in Alaska, you cannot have a military in Alaska. So is Alaska really part of the US? Or is it only on paper? And also the Sinai has a lot of oil fields, a lot of resources down. The Sinai is not just a desert, it has oil. It is very strategic. That's number one. So after this war, Egypt is out of the agreement, out of the military equation between the Arab and Israeli conflict. And the people are pissed, but the government doesn't care because the government wants to secure the chair. As a result of this agreement, the president of Egypt is killed because the people are pissed. Because Egypt was humiliated, politically and economically. Then Israel, in 1982, invades Lebanon. And the history is long, but Israel kept invading Lebanon and invaded all the Arab countries. As a result, you have the following happening. You have the creation of a group known as Hezbollah. So people can understand, well, where did Hezbollah come from? Hezbollah is a group backed by Iran that fought against Israel, and as a result, this is Israel's Vietnam, Lebanon. That's why today, Iran and Israel are clashing. It's not just bullets now, it's economic warfare. Lebanon is literally being pressured right now. They have two choices. Get out of the resistance axis, don't be an ally of Iran, and we'll give you money, we'll help you economically, or you could stay with Iran, but we will crush you. We will economically destroy you. So that's why we have problems in Lebanon right now, because of Hezbollah. Then you have, today, the Gaza Strip. Oh, you want to pause? Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that was fantastic, and that you definitely educated me a lot. I just want to...
Yeah.
And we're going to continue.
I'll come back, okay, come back. Yeah, I had to break myself. Because I was across the street, I had an altercation with the protesters.
Oh, no.
Across the street, yeah.
And we need to recognize that standing up with the Afghan people is standing up for Palestine liberation. And we need to recognize that marching isn't enough. That protesting isn't enough. That social media by itself isn't enough. That we have to innovate. That we have to bring our family and our friends.
that we have to say no to cages. Yes to taking the streets, but also to building the alternatives that make this fucking government obsolete. Because there's absolutely no way for us to get free just in the hood without being anti-imperial. Fuck this U.S. empire. Americans said it before us, the black radical tradition said it before us. Each struggle is coming to a head. And when oppressed people come together, they're afraid. So just remember when you leave, it doesn't take many people. It didn't take many in Tahrir Square. It didn't take many in all these places. But people take risks and speak truth to power and know how to say, fuck the police. Because there is no Palestine liberation alongside the police who are killing our brothers and sisters and comrades and getting training in Israel. We don't give a fuck if there's one bad apple or two bad apples. This is a system, and I swear to God, the only way to get free together is to reorient to each other. The idea of elections, the idea of it's okay here, it'll be worse elsewhere is bullshit. They let people fall off of planes, y'all. They demolished the fucking country for 20-some years. You want to tell me there's no Islamophobia there? Right now there's no Orientalism being treated. It's the same shit that they apply to the Palestinians. Look at these racist motherfuckers. They should be afraid. They kill our families and they think they can do this? That's the rage that we need to bring. But it just bring people with you. All of this is groundwork because the spark is going to come from elsewhere. If it's not the 4 martyrs right now that move us, and it's not the Afghan people that we left abandoned, it'll be something else. But that time is fucking coming. So bring your friends and family.
Within our lifetime!
solution? Like, how do people feel about it? Because like when we came up earlier, my friend asked some people about their thoughts on the two-state solution, and it seemed like a very triggering question.
Okay, you know why it's triggering? Because we Palestinians sacrificed a lot. For 25 years, we were negotiating with the Israeli government. Let's do a two-state solution. We recognize that you stole 78% of historical Palestine, and we're willing to take the two-state solution. The Israelis said it, quote, okay, but while we are negotiating, they're eating more of the land. They're building more settlements. That's number one. Number two, what will happen to the other Palestinians that were forced out of their country? Forced out of Haifa, out of Jaffa, out of Akka. Should we go back to them and tell them, hey, listen, man, we have this half-ship deal where we're not allowed to have an army, we're not allowed to have our own airport, we're not allowed to move freely. Can you imagine if there's a war, let's say between America and China had the upper hand, and China tells the United States, okay, we'll let you guys be independent again, but you're not allowed to have an army, not allowed to have an airport, no freedom of movement. We control the strategic lands, the agriculture. So basically, the American government will just be a proxy. That's the Palestinian government.
So guys, I traveled to Palestine and Israel back in 2019. So what you're talking about is also what I witnessed when I was there. That there's a different like ID and passport. Palestinians are not allowed to travel based on their ID classification, even using certain roads. While Israelis are free to travel about the country, but Palestinians are not able to cross over into Israeli territories. And when I was talking to Palestinians there, they were telling me about the airport situation. That without like these IDs or passports, they are not able to fly out of Tel Aviv airport, so often they have to cross over to Jordan to then fly out of Amman airport. So I can back what my friend here is describing is the things that I witnessed myself while I was visiting Palestine.
And also, since you were there are three types of classes in Palestine. You have the first, which is the worst, Gaza, which they are literally, it is like the North Korea of the Middle East. They're not allowed to leave. They're not allowed to do anything. The unemployment rate, get this, is above 60%. That means everyone is sitting their ass at home and they can't do anything. They want to work. They want to get a job. It's not like here in this country where people are sitting on their ass and they have the option to go to work and not go to work. There is no work. Everybody they're dependent on the aid. And Gaza, right now, they used to have an airport. There used to be seaports. Gaza used to trade with the world. But Israel closed everything down. They are choking Gaza like the Warsaw Ghetto. Egypt is also doing Israel's bidding. So continuing. The second, which I personally have personal experience from my family members, are the West Bank Palestinians who have a green ID known as the Hawiyya. This basically means they have to stay in the West Bank. They have no rights. The Israelis can step on them. They could do whatever they want. Beat them, put them in jail for 6 months. It's not like in America where the police needs a warrant. And then there's a trial, and then they determine whether you're innocent or guilty. It's not like that. Over there, the conviction rate in the West Bank against Palestinians is 97.8%. That means game over. You might as well get a plea deal. Because the Israeli court system against Palestinians, against Muslims, against Arabs is biased in the favor of the Israelis. On the other hand, in the West Bank, same piece of land, the Israelis are literally building settlements on land that doesn't belong to them. They stole my family's land, and there are two settlements that were built, known as Ofra and Beit Il. These settlements are illegal under international law. And then people ask, why do Palestinians blow themselves up? Why do Palestinians kill Israelis? Because you are stealing my land. I ask a simple question. Let me simplify it. If someone were to come to your house and beat up your mom and beat up your sister, take your money, take your land, and oppress you, are you gonna just sit on your ass? I mean, this country had a revolution because no one had rights. So how come when the Palestinians want their rights, we are terrorists, we have to bow down? I don't play that shit. Everyone deserves rights. It's not just America that deserves rights, or France, or England. We deserve rights too. We deserve a state too. And if we're not gonna, if the world is not gonna give us a state, we're not gonna wait. We're gonna keep fighting, even if it takes 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, a century, we will have an independent Palestinian state. So let's go to the third category. The third category are quote-unquote Israeli Arabs. These are Palestinians that live inside what Palestinians call the 1948 territory, historical Palestine, where after 1948 there were 100,000 Arabs remaining. Today, thank God, we're 2 million. Our population increased because we had a baby boom. So these Arabs, they have rights, quote-unquote, they could vote, quote-unquote, but they can't expand their towns, they can't expand their cities. They need a permit from the Israeli government, which the Israeli government will not give, because Israel is exclusively, they say, a Jewish democracy. Basically, what does this mean, folks? This means Jews have privilege. Arabs do not have privilege. The Arabs can scream, they could bark until the full moon. They're not going to get their rights. So that's apartheid inside Israel. And also, in Arabic cities, Israelis are kicking out Arabs from places like Jaffa, Haifa, Akka, all these Arab cities. They're kicking them out and bringing in Israeli settlers that come from Manhattan, that come from Chicago, that come from France, that come from England, that come from Russia, Ukraine, and so on and so forth. And the Arabs are being evicted because this land, according to the Israelis, according to the Zionists, this land is only Jewish, only Zionist. Can you imagine, if you look at the history, let's play it like this. Spain used to be a Muslim country, technically. So does that give Muslims the right to go into Spain and kick out all the Catholics and oppress all the Catholics and oppress all the Jews and make Spain an Islamic state and kick out all the Spanish and Portuguese people and make Arabic the national language? No. No.
I have a question for you regarding the I guess the citizenship, because I know that like Israel offers citizenship to anybody who is of Jewish descent or is Jewish. So one of the speakers earlier was talking about how like she's not able to visit her Palestinian family. So
her story is interesting. Her story, because she does this protest, and they say Israel's a democracy. She protests, and when she went to Palestine in 2016. Her name is Nadine Kiswani. You could Google her story. The Israelis are like, you're not allowed in. F you triggered us because we were SJWs. And boo-hoo, you can't come into your country. Get the hell out. So basically, Palestinians have no free speech in Israel, quote unquote. The Israeli government doesn't give Palestinians freedom of speech. You're not allowed to criticize the Israeli government if you're Palestinian. Only if you're Jewish and a Zionist are you allowed your human rights. But if you're a Palestinian and you criticize the Israeli government and you start a movement like Nadine Kiswani here and you fight against Israel in any way, armed, BDS, you know what BDS is, right? Boycott, divest, and sanctions. BDS is like the approach like, okay, we're not going to be violent, but we're going to boycott Israeli goods until Israel treats Palestinians with respect. Apparently, the other side thinks if you boycott Israeli goods that you're anti-Semitic. Let's go back. So let me show you.
Let me ask you about like what do you think about the situation now with Ben and Jerry's?
I mean, Ben and Jerry's, bro, it's their company, bro. They have the right to boycott the Israeli government because the Israeli government is oppressing Palestinians. And they didn't say they're gonna boycott all of Israel. They said they're gonna boycott the occupied territories, like the West Bank, Golan Heights, Gaza Strip. If the products come from Tel Aviv, for example, they're not gonna boycott it. And also if they're going to open it inside, in Israel itself, or what is now known as Israel. So there is, I don't see the controversy. Also,
there's only certain parts of Israel that they're boycotting. And
the occupied territory, so the West Bank, Gaza, and Golan Heights. Now, let me show you how stupid the argument is. So if I boycott Saudi goods because of what they're doing in Yemen, does that make me a self-hating Muslim or Islamophobe? No! Because I'm boycotting Saudi Arabia not because they are Muslim, but because they are bombing Yemen, another Muslim country. If I boycott German goods because of what the Nazis are doing, they did to the Jews, or what they're doing to the Jews, does that make me anti-German? No! Let's see how stupid the argument sounds. Israel has to follow international law. Israel's not above the law. And then the hilarious part, when the Palestinians resist, when the Palestinians fire rockets, when the Palestinians throw rocks, when the Palestinians go on, I don't know, a killing spree, stabbing spree, or in some cases, worst case, suicide bombing, people are like, oh my God, the Palestinians are terrorists. The question, why is this happening? Okay, as a Muslim, I'm principled. We're not saying go around and kill civilians, because our religion teaches us if you kill one innocent person, it's like you killed all of humanity. So that's off the table. Suicide bombings should be off the table, no question. But what's the difference when Israel uses F-16s, F-35s, bombs Gaza, kills civilians, destroys houses in the West Bank, kills families, shoots people and steal their land and build settlements, and also on top of oppressing the Palestinians, attacking our holy sites like Masjid al-Aqsa, and also attacking their neighbors like Syria and Egypt and Jordan and Lebanon. So, taking these into consideration, this is why Israel is hated in the region. It's not because, they're Jewish. It's because they came from other countries, literally, Poland, Russia, Ukraine, the United States, France, wherever, even Middle Eastern countries, even Yemen, Algeria, all these countries. They came to Palestine, kicked out the owners of the land, literally did an ethnic cleansing, and then from 1948 onwards, the Palestinians are fighting with the Israelis head on till now, until we got our human rights. We just want our rights, our right to our country, our right to our army, our right to govern how we see fit. Nobody tells America how to run their country. No one tells France or England how to run their country. We want the same consideration. We want to have our own country, our own airports. If I bet you $1 million, if Israel lifts the siege on Gaza and allows the Palestinians to grow their own businesses, allow the Palestinians to live like human beings, and give us our right to return to our land, and a two-state solution that is just, that makes sense, then there won't be no violence. But Israel's not looking for peace. They're looking for pieces of land to steal. And they're constantly expanding. You went to Palestine. You've seen it firsthand. So the question then goes, if you have an entity that is against the Palestinians, a government that is racist, that wants to ethnically cleanse, that wants to steal your house, what are the Palestinians supposed to do? They're going to fight back. And now this is the problem. The United States, which is another reason why America is hated in the Middle East, we give Israel $38 billion every decade. That's on the table. Imagine under the table. Why don't we use that money for our infrastructure? Why don't we use that money for stimulus checks or to create jobs here in this country? Instead of giving money to Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt to oppress their own people, or to oppress Muslims around the world, or to oppress anyone around the world, we have problems in this country. Like our currency is hit new levels of inflation. And we're basically giving money to the Israeli government. Why? Because Israel goes into Congress and they make it rain. And then after that, America's like, okay, we'll give you weapons or what have you. So that's our problem with the Israeli government. And if Israel stays on this course, because no way Israel's going to stay existing if it stays on this path. Like Nazi Germany was destroyed, like South Africa, apartheid South Africa was dismantled. Israel will be dismantled if it stays on this path. Because guess what? You have Iran now, you have Pakistan now. Iran is getting more influence in the Middle East. Syria is rebuilding, and the Middle East is waiting for the right time to rise up against Israel. And when this occurs, Israel will have a reckoning that you have never seen before in history. Do you have any other questions?
It might be a long question too. I think I want to understand, a couple weeks ago when the protests here began, what was the perspective of what happened back in Israel with the tenants being evicted?
Okay.
Long story short, but the trio of fire, those images that then sparked everything.
So what happened was the Israelis attacked Islam's third holy site, Masjid al-Aqsa. So I want people to imagine, if you're Catholic or Christian, imagine people attacking the Vatican. If a Muslim army attacked the Vatican or the Vatican, we would have World War III. We would have World War III. So that's what happened. And then after that, when the Muslims got pissed around the world, you had the protests, and then on top of that, Israel wanted to evict Palestinians from their houses, and that was the last straw that broke the camel's back. Hamas warned Israel, and the Palestinian armed forces responded with rocket fire. Now, when the Palestinians started firing rockets, oh my God, the American media started paying attention. But they only pay attention to a certain part of the story. They didn't pay attention to the whole story. So that's what flared up the latest round of violence in Palestine. It's still happening right now. Right now, they're still stealing houses and building settlements.
Move behind the banner.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you.
No problem.
We'll continue. Let's follow the
down from all the way in the back.
Intifada revolution! Intifada, Intifada! Globalize Intifada!
will free Palestine. Within our lifetime. We will free Palestine. Within our lifetime. It is right to rebel. Israel, go to hell. It is right to rebel. Israel, go to hell. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. There is only one solution. Intifada revolution. One solution. Intifada revolution. Intifada. Lord, Intifada. I said Intifada. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. It is right to rebel. Israel, go to hell. Resistance is justified. The people are colonized. Resistance is justified. The people are colonized. We will free Palestine within our lifetime. We will free Palestine within our lifetime. No justice. No justice. If we don't get 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 no justice. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. From the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. ومن المياه للمياه. فلسطين عربية. من المياه للمياه. فلسطين عربية. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. And what do we want? What do we want? What do we want? What do we want? If we don't get it. 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 If Gaza doesn't get it. Whose street? Whose land? 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 Whose street? Whose land?
free Palestine!
Repeat after me. Repeat after me. We're gonna get a lesson in history today. On who has been on the wrong side of history. We're about to stop. I mean, we're about to pass by the permanent mission of the Republic of Sudan to the United Nations. It's actually down there, but we're turning over here because it is just one of the many traitorous normalizers who have normalized relations with Israel. September 1, 1967. The Khartoum Resolution was issued at the 1967 Arab League Summit. This happened in the wake of the Nakba. In April 11, 219, Sudanese president is removed from power after 30 years. In October 2020, Israel and Sudan's unelected government announced the normalization of the diplomatic relations and opening an economic So this building, 301 Embassy House, has the embassies of Sudan and the UAE, the permanent mission of Sudan and the UAE to the United Nations. Both of these countries normalized relations with Israel in 2020. In August 2020, the UAE agreed to normalize relations with the Zionist state in exchange to buy U.S. military F-35 advanced fighter jets. They are making these deals to sell weapons, to buy weapons, and to facilitate imperialism and colonial domination of our people. During the recent Intifada, the UAE repeated the same nonsense spoken by governments like the US and the UK. They called on both sides to exercise restraint. However, they did not show total support and solidarity with the Palestinian people. Since then, Israel has opened its weapons markets for sale to the UAE and collaborated on military drone research. Can you all hear me? Yeah! Speak then. We also must speak about the UAE's assault on our brothers and sisters in Yemen. They have shamefully participated in the US-backed Saudi-led war that has murdered tens of thousands of people and left the country in a humanitarian catastrophe. The Palestinian and Yemeni experiences are different, but we stand with Yemen and demand the UAE cease its disgraceful assault and sever relations with Israel immediately. We are also passing by and are about to be in front of the Bahrain, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia consulates and missions, which are actually right across from us right here at 866. So we're going to stop here for a while and listen and learn about Bahrain and all of the other countries that have normalized relations with Israel. Bahrain formally recognized Israel in the same accords in October 2020. But in reality, the Bahraini monarchy has had unofficial intelligence and diplomatic relations for years with the enemy since 2011, at least. Bahrain, like the UAE and other countries, signed this shameful normalization plan and not exact one iota of concession in exchange. The siege of Gaza was not lifted by a millimeter. There were no prisoner releases. So for what reason then did the Bahraini monarchy sign the accords? In actuality, the monarchy is an entity that feels right at home among friends like Israel and the US. It has brutally repressed the people's movement for freedom for over 10 years. The monarchy rules over a people who do not benefit from the wealth of the country. And like the UAE, it has participated in the inhuman assault on Yemen. The people of Bahrain bravely defied the monarchy's ban on political expression in 2020 to express the slogan of normalization is betrayal, in Arabic, at-tatbi'a khayana. The agreement was met with the widespread anger against the monarchy's betrayal of Palestine. Street rallies were ongoing in the city of Bahrain for days and weeks after the agreement was signed. This is also home to the permanent mission of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan to the United States. In October 1994, Israel and Jordan signed a peace treaty, making Jordan the first Arab country to normalize with the Zionist entity since Egypt in 1979. In 96, the U.S. granted Jordan major non-NATO ally status, a designation, among other things, that makes them eligible to receive excess U.S. defense articles, training, and loans of equipment for cooperative research and development. Do you notice a pattern here? You sign a treaty with Israel and the U.S. sells or gives you weapons. The U.S. economic aid to Jordan in 2019 has been up to $1.25 billion, and U.S. military aid to Jordan up to 2019 has been up to $465 million. So we see that these Arab countries get paid by facilitating relations, by facilitating arms trades with the U.S. when they sign relations with Israel. And that's what it's all about. Because they too are also conducting their brutal repression of people in their countries and also bombing countries like Yemen. Not Jordan, but with Jordan as well, with Saudi Arabia and other countries facilitating the imperial domination of Arab countries around them in connection and in collaboration with the U.S. And that brings us to Saudi Arabia. This is the Consulate General of Saudi Arabia. And their position on Palestine can be best summed up by a quote from the Saudi dictator, Mohammed bin Salman. He said, "It is about time the Palestinians take the proposals and agree to come to the negotiations table or shut up and stop complaining." This is what the dictator has said about Palestine and the Palestinian people. They publicly denied that there will be any Saudi-Israeli relations before a Palestinian state is established. The Saudi regime has consistently betrayed and sabotaged Palestinian national aspirations for decades. They've had unofficial diplomatic and intelligence contacts for many years, and they even met with Netanyahu last year, and most recently met with an Israeli intelligence to strategize against Iran and discuss shared interests in the region. Most recently, just the other day, Saudi has actually imprisoned 69 Palestinians and Jordanians in the country for sentence up to 22 years. Their crime? Supporting the Palestinian resistance. How can a regime who strategizes with the enemy and arrest people for supporting Palestinian resistance be a friend to our people? It cannot. And during the recent Intifada, Saudi officials posted messages on Twitter and wagged their fingers at Israel for its brutality. But in private, the Saudi regime is a reliable friend to Israel and a friend to the imperialists. And we cannot stop at the Saudi consulate without speaking of Yemen once again. Tens of thousands of Yemeni lives lie on the doorstep of Mohammed bin Salman and his allies, which include Israel and the United States. We are now passing by the permanent mission of Egypt today, but it's a few blocks away on 304 East 44th Street. But on September 17, 1978, the Egyptian President Anwar Sadat and Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin signed the Camp David Accords, which led to the normalization of diplomatic relations between Egypt and Israel in '79. President Jimmy Carter promised Sadat $1 billion a year in military aid if he accepted the terms of peace with Israel. And today, Egypt receives $1.3 billion in U.S. military aid a year. The second most country in the world, only after what? You guessed it, Israel, of course. Yep. As per the terms of Camp David. The relationship between the U.S. and Egypt is built primarily on sustaining the 1979 Egyptian-Israeli peace treaty. And while other people, liberals, people who don't stand with Palestine, saw this and hailed it as a watershed moment in diplomatic history, in reality we know that it represented a dramatic escalation in U.S. military expansionism in the region in the name of new weapons sales and economic trade agreements. This is also how the U.S. leveraged military aid and weapons sales to Egypt as a means of pushing normalization with the occupation, much like the U.S. is doing today in real time with the UAE and Bahrain. And finally, we have to talk about Turkey, which is located at 821 United Nations Plaza, which we won't get to today, but is also near here. These are the streets where their diplomats drive. These are the streets where their diplomats roam. Hopefully some of them can hear us up in this building, or they can see us on the news or on our social media and hear the message that we are sending to them for betraying the Palestinian cause, for standing with our enemy, for signing so-called peace deals when in reality it's the opposite of peace. They're just signing deals so they can get weapons, more weapons themselves, so they can use it against their own people, so they can use it against the people of the countries that they're waging wars against. And we know that the people of Turkey are not like the governments. Just like every other government we mentioned, the people of these nations, whether it's Egypt, whether it's Morocco, whether it's the Sudanese, whether it's the Bahraini or the Jordanian people, we know that they have stood in total and unequivocal solidarity with the Palestinian people for over 70 years, even resisting alongside of us. We have seen this resistance. But as I have said before, and I will continue to reiterate, it is these corrupt governments punishing, torturing their own people that are also doing this to Palestinians. And it's no different with Turkey. The people of Turkey have been long friends of our people, of Palestine. But we call them out to protest their government. Because in 1949, Turkey was the first Muslim country to recognize the Zionist entity. Only 1 year after the Nakba, which began our long period of exile. And while many things in Turkey changed since then, some haven't. After the flotilla in 2011, Turkey claimed that they cut all ties with Israel in defense of Palestine. However, the question must be asked, why do those ties exist in the first place? Ranging from military, scientific, and diplomatic cooperation. And more importantly, why do those ties continue to exist to this day? Why was there a $6.8 billion in trade between Israel and Turkey in 2020 alone? Why do we allow this to happen? Before COVID, the biggest international carrier in Tel Aviv airport was Turkish Airlines, ferrying settlers all over Turkey and vice versa. Why is Turkey building a 1,600-kilometer oil pipeline from Israel to Europe as we speak? And why do Israeli-made drones fly over the heads of Turkish Kurds and Syrians, operated by Turkish soldiers? Why are Turkish and Israeli military officials strategizing together? These are not easy questions, but they are important questions for our movement. The question we must ask is, who are the friends of Palestine and who are its enemies? The friends of Palestine are the people. The friends of Palestine are the masses. The friends of Palestine are the oppressed. The friends of Palestine are people who are fighting for their own liberation. So when we say Turkey, Morocco, Sudan, Bahrain, UAE, or Jordan loves Palestine, we know that that means that the people love us, that the people stand with us, not the corrupt governments. And as people who live in the USA, yes, I'm talking to you, everybody who can hear me, people who pay taxes. We also want you to differentiate between your beliefs and your government. Because your taxes as a U.S., as a person living in the U.S., go to fund $3.8 billion in military aid to Israel every single year. You heard that right. That means $10 million a day of your tax dollars goes to fund Israel's military and ends up as bullets in the chests of Palestinian children. So if we don't support that, if we don't believe that Palestinians deserve to face genocide, if we believe that Palestinians deserve to live free of ethnic cleansing, then we have to understand and we have to support the call to the end of U.S. military aid to Israel, to the end of U.S. diplomatic support to Israel. Because again, this is a nation that represses a people within its borders, that wages imperialist wars all over the world, and uses our tax dollars to do it. We know that living in the U.S. stand against Israel. Free! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! Palestine! Within our lifetime! Intifada! 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 Long live Intifada! Long live Intifada! 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 Globalize the Intifada! Globalize the Intifada! Globalize the Intifada! Globalize the Intifada! And this is why we have taken up the slogan, the understanding, the campaign of Globalize the Intifada. We know our struggle is global. We know support for Palestine is global. Racists like her and governments that have stood with the corrupt, that have stood with those committing genocide, that have conducted and facilitated imperialism all over the world, will be face to face their shame and history, because we know that we will free Palestine within our lifetime, and we know that in order to do so, we must globalize the Intifada. We have to understand that our people, that our struggles as a people is one, because we are fighting against the common enemy. And we will continue to name and shame all those that make shameful normalizing relations with Israel, the entity responsible for killing hundreds of Palestinians this year alone, for injuring thousands. You will be in the dustbin of history. There will always be people that will be here to call you out. There will always be people here that will know that your actions are shameful. And we know that they're motivated by a need and by a want to buy weapons and to kill more people. So above all, when we're here today, we have to leave understanding and knowing that we must globalize the Intifada. That it can't just be one struggle, that the struggle for Palestinian liberation, for the liberation of all people who live in these lands, who work in these lands, whether it's migrant laborers, whether it's black people in the U.S. all over the world or all over the world, whether it's indigenous people, whether it's people fighting against repressive regimes, our struggle is one. Our struggle is one. And this is why we put the call to globalize the Intifada so loud. Because we want to make sure that message is loud and clear. We want to make sure that message is heard. And we want to come together. We have the Afghanistan flag. We have the Moroccan flag. We have the Jamaican flag. We have the Bangladeshi flag. Because we have the people on our side. So, Intifada, Intifada! Globalize Intifada! Intifada, Intifada! Globalize the Intifada! Intifada, Intifada! Long live the Intifada! Intifada, Intifada! Long live the Intifada! These are the people who've been fighting and will continue to fight, whether or not Palestine is in the headlines. Y'all are those people. And it's because of you. It's because we know that there are people who care. There are people who will come out, despite Palestine disappearing from the headlines. We have committed to doing an action or to doing something for Palestine every single week from now until September 17th. I don't want to see these numbers diminish. Like I said last time, bring your friends, bring your family. Every single week we have something planned. Because we don't want Palestine to disappear from the headlines. We don't want everyone who pretended to care for a few moments to go back to ignoring our struggle, to go back to ignoring the plight of the Palestinians. We want to make it known that we will always fight for Palestine, and especially as Palestinians continue to resist in our homeland, we have to elevate and uplift their resistance from wherever we are, with whatever we have. So again, thank you all for coming out today. We let these embassies know, and we'll be tagging them, we'll be posting them, we'll make sure that they see it one way or another. Whether or not they saw us from down here, I don't know if they're actually in these buildings with COVID, but we sent a message today about globalizing the Intifada, and that we're going to come for anybody who stands against Palestinian resistance and Palestinian people, not just Israel, not just the U.S., but anybody, even from the countries that we come from. Despite their government, and there's other countries I don't even need to mention because their government doesn't have any relations with Israel at all. So. Before we leave, we want to do a group photo right here at this 2 Hamish Gold Plaza. So if y'all can please move on to the sidewalk, we want to show a group photo and show all the countries and all the people that are out for Palestinian liberation that are here to globalize the Intifada. Let's bring all the different flags on the top. Jamaica, I see you too. We want you up there too. And we're going to do say Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Come on, we want as many people part of the picture. Please join us. There's a lot of people taking pictures. We want more people on the other side. If you're part of the protest, join the photo. Thank you.
Yeah, it's too wide.
Well, listen. I like the flags.
Got a flag, wave it. It's gonna be hard.
Yeah.
guys, I'm going to go ahead and cut the stream off.
If you
My
use
batteries
the
are about
flag,
to
please
die.
bring it back to the truck. If you bought
we'll
on the
debrief
flag,
later,
Hamas
okay?
banner, sign, anything, please bring it back to the truck. We're going to be organizing more protests, more actions, more events for Palestine weekly, so we need everything back.
Thank you for coming.
No, thanks for